Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much again for joining me here. Hope you're having a fantastic day. We're taking a look here at Bitcoin, crypto market overview, and starting with some fundamentals here, because these definitely have an impact on the market. The European Union is going to suspend its planned countermeasures to basically the US essentially for 6 months to allow for trade talks. So this has a positive impact on the market. Basically, a lot of tariff stuff was going on Friday too as well, with just a bunch of Trump tweets, and all that stuff basically caused the market to pull back quite significantly here. So keep that in mind. Now at this point, it's a little too early to tell what's going to happen specifically, but we're going to talk about key level resistances, specific areas of resistance on certain altcoins here today, and more importantly, which ones have broken free. XRP's testing resistance, ETH has broken through. So be very careful just jumping into some short positions with these coins, but also probably more likely to find success too, because those are key level resistances that we're looking at. So we're going to talk about that. So let's go ahead and quickly note here first. Let's go ahead and find the right screen. Crypto market overview. What we want to talk about here is the fear and greed index increasing by a small margin. This isn't like super substantial, but basically as we continue to maintain a bit of a lower projection here with crypto fear and greed index, it's actually a very positive sign because people keep buying these dips, and we're seeing a lot more buying pressure here recently than ever before. A lot of volume is flowing in. You can see tremendous amount of volume in the last couple of months. So ever since we've been in the 100K plus range, we've been seeing this kind of price action. Super favorable in my personal opinion. I like to see fear and greed index taper off as just like we see RSIs in larger time frames, kind of letting us know that relative strength is decreasing, but also we have more, like, you know, everyone seems to be more passionate about buying Bitcoin, and of course altcoins as well too. And this is a reflection of that. If we look here, we're back up to a 43. We've been maintaining in the mid to upper 30s and low 40s for the last couple of weeks. And this is actually a very good sign. It shows there's a lot more strength versus Bitcoin with the majority of altcoins. Granted, there's some outliers that aren't doing so well, but for the most part, majority of them are doing very awesome. And a lot of these are coins that we cover in our analysis daily. So the concept here is just simply put, altcoin season index is looking very good. In my personal opinion, when we have altcoin market cap increasing, that's usually a good sign here. Even with it coming back down here recently, we didn't drop too low, basically telling us that a lot of altcoins are not selling off like super significant, which is fantastic. So let's go ahead and start off with the baseline here with Bitcoin first, kind of go from there and see where we're at, because as per usual, you always have to know what's going on with Bitcoin to understand how trading works. First of all, we're going to talk about top trading average leverage here. This basically tells us we have more leverage longs than shorts in the market. Right now, we're seeing a break even here for the current candle. This can change quickly, but for the most part, we see a lot of longs here in the market with leverage. Those are top traders, basically implying those are high volume traders. All that being said, they're shifting gears potentially here, but this candle literally just started a few minutes ago, so nothing super crazy there. Bid to ask ratio here, we are starting to see a little bit more selling than buying as far as the overall sentiment on, you know, asking to sell their positions versus the actual buy orders. But we look here at liquidation short delta, it's still really high. Okay, and we're also below key level resistance. Generally speaking, that's not a favorable sign to try to take a long into, right? So if you're in a long position right now, consider securing profits. We're in a long position at roughly 112,950 is our average entry for Bitcoin on a long, and you know, we're looking good there, but also probably best to consider securing some profits just because we're traveling into a resistance range. All that said, 116,000 is that next area of open interest that would be presumed as a new resistance here for us, or sorry, not new resistance, but it'll be the resistance once we get to that range. When we take a look here as well, this is the last 1 month. It's kind of sparse here, right? We got a pretty big gap, 105 to 108, and then 120 to 125 above. Why don't we zoom in a little bit here, kind of see what's going on in the last 7 days, and just recognize that there is liquidation above the price here at 116 to 118. That's the closest chunk that we have here locally. Once more, those are just above that key level resistance, so most short holders feel confident in having a stop loss or liquidation event in that area because they don't think that 115.5 will be broken, which is sensible because that was our local bottom, potentially retested as a new high, or actually exactly was retested as a new high at 115.3, 115.4. Let's talk about CME gaps here really quick before we get started. There was a CME gap that was, I think we had a CME gap starting at 113.3. price is lower. So that one's actually, that never got filled because it never actually happened, right? So we don't actually have a CME gap any longer on Bitcoin because we closed higher on Sunday than we closed rather on Friday. So all good there. Let's quickly note Ethereum as well and just clarify it's roughly the same scenario here too. So this one is null and void. These were all hypothetical CME gaps that never needed to get filled because they were never created in the first place, because obviously the price had closed lower, we would have that gap right now. Since we closed higher, we're in good shape there. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Bitcoin charts and recognize here once more, just kind of reaffirm 115,400, 115.3, really close to that level, was a previous low, potential new high for us here. We can also see we are overextended leading into that. So as a 9 on TD sequential leading into a resistance range, the hypothetical, the realisticness of the price pulling back is higher. In other words, it's more likely to occur. So once more, we've been running for a solid, 36 hours without retracement, and now it makes sense for the price to pull back. So standard stuff. Anytime you see an overextension with a 9 on TD sequential leading into a resistance, that's generally a good place to consider shorting. Had I been awake, 2 hours ago, I would have probably considered a short that level. But I never wake up and just take a short into a resistance just because it is. I like to reevaluate and make sure to understand what's going on. I do that for myself and for my community. Speaking of our community, congrats to our community members for some nice profits here on our Litecoin long. We took a long at 109, roughly to 115. And if you saw my analysis from yesterday, you'll know that we covered that. So that was a confirmed breakout here. So be sure to check those videos out. Make sure you enable alerts too as well if you haven't yet already. Okay, so all that being said, Bitcoin, that's kind of the summary here, right? We got that resistance. If we get more volume flowing in, then we're going to be in good shape. We are seeing a decent amount of volume here. This is a good sign, but it needs to continue to sustain to see higher price action. It would make sense for the price to pull back by a small margin and then leg up again, because oftentimes you need to retest resistances a couple of times before the price breaks out. This could even be like a pretty ugly cup and handle pattern here forming, which, by the way, SUI has a really small time frame cup and handle pattern. We'll talk about that here in a minute. All right. So Bitcoin, we know what's going on there. That's kind of a foundation. We understand we're traveling into resistance. Now, when it comes to Ethereum, there's no F's given here on this coin because it broke straight through that local bottom, which was roughly 3,600. So that's supposed to have been the resistance. Didn't matter. A lot of volume flowing in fact, more volume than Bitcoin. I'm excited to see the ETF inflow for this coin. By the way, there's a delay on weekends. We won't have that information until tomorrow or even the day after. All that said, though, let's take a look at the backend data for Ethereum and kind of see where we're at here, because this coin is rocking and rolling. We want to kind of understand if it's going to pull back or not, because we are traveling into a lot of resistance here, but this doesn't matter too much because generally speaking, open interest is supposed to work as a resistance for you, right? And we can see here, a lot of open interest at 36.50 and of course 35.50. Those are kind of like those two heavy areas. We've got another heavy area here at about 36.80. So 36.80 could be our new resistance. So just an area to be mindful of. We are traveling into that, a lot of exit liquidity. People are going to try to be selling their position as they get back into profit. That's generally how open interest works. But we look here at liquidation short delta. It's now down at about 6 billion, down from 14 billion this time yesterday. So a significant correction has occurred here. And we're looking at the last 7 days here of liquidation for Ethereum. You can recognize there's quite a lot above the price action, upwards about 4,000, even 4,200. So a lot of shorts are in the market right now, probably about to get pretty well hammered. So taking a look at the daily time frame for ETH, let's quickly note a couple of things here. First of all, from a macro perspective, we are retesting our 20-day SMA. That is neither good nor bad. That's just kind of letting us know that we're trying to break back into the bullish type of structure here. It's not like it's bearish by any stretch as soon as you lose that. It just kind of implies that could be a new resistance range for us. We're back up over 50 in the RSI, or basically bounced off 50 over the weekend. Money flow index is coming down, generally construed as a hidden type of bearish divergence, but I really hate that term. If you've watched my channel for any stretch of time, you'll know that nothing is truly hidden. It's all here pretty clear and transparent on the daily. All that being said, when the money flow index pulls below the RSI, it's generally construed as a shift in momentum. Okay, and it happens a lot with most coins in these type of bullish scenarios where they retest moving averages or pull back. But either way, you can see stochastic swinging up here. We got good momentum to the upside here with a short-term continuation higher, and having broken back into its range, I feel comfortable recommending a long versus a short position on this coin. I don't recommend a short at this point, especially if Bitcoin breaks above 115K. We're going to be in pretty rough shape if you're considering a short on this coin. Either way, I get the concept of wanting to short into this, but it's generally construed as a not so great idea in this situation, especially with the volume remaining high, right? All that said, we're back up over our 20-day SMA, 50s above us, so we haven't fully broken bullish yet. But if we do take a look at the point of control here in volume, we can see here the most amount of volume is at 36.15 and 36.50. So we're kind of right in that little range there. So we got a range of volume resistance. Closing above 36.50 today would probably signal a continuation higher. If that were to happen, the best thing to anticipate is to try to get into the next low. In other words, it's common for previous highs or previous resistances to be retested as a new support before it continues higher. So we could very well see a retest at 3,600. If so, that is a consideration for a long if we close in that 36 to 36.50 range today. Obviously, that requires Bitcoin to hopefully be above 115K. I think that's an important factor to recognize. But for right now, that's kind of where we're at. All right, let's take a look here at Solana. Solana lately has been underwhelming. It has a nice little push here recently to its resistance, but let's talk about the back-end liquidation data first and go from there. So open interest, if we just kind of zoom in here, find the heaviest concentrations, 168's that massive area. So not saying you should short at 168, just saying that that's going to be a resistance coming here moving forward very, very soon. Liquidation short delta is still high at about 2.5 billion. And if we do take a look at the last month's worth of trading, let's actually scroll down, kind of zoom into the last 7 days and recognize that there's a lot of liquidation above the price. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do continue a bit higher based on too many shorts being in the market and a lot of shorts potentially going to get squeezed out here soon. But from a volume perspective, there's not a tremendous amount here that's like super amazing, but we are trending above support. Once more, support, if you caught my video from yesterday, is that 148 to 156 range. Okay, so definitely looking good there in that regard. As far as maintaining above support, just know we're traveling into resistance at 168. Not necessarily the best consideration. Let's see if there's anything on the daily telling us where we're at. This is a good sign here. I do like this, however. We have the 200 and the 50-day SMA hanging out right there at about 162. So it is an area of confluence there, once more kind of giving us confirmation that we're more likely to find continuation higher, maintaining above that average for hopefully next couple of days. So we can stay above 162 the next 24 to 48 hours, then I would say a long position on this coin seems to make more sense. Between now and then, it's too early to feel confident about this little blip on the radar, so to speak, traveling into resistance. I don't truly love what I see here from this coin just yet. But I'll be patient and wait and see if we have a good opportunity to potentially get into a long here soon. Once more, we see Bitcoin go range bound for a little bit longer. Solana will probably continue to progress higher. We just want to pay attention to volume. Take a look here at SUI next. We're going to double check our open interest areas. There's a little bit of open interest at 350, but for the most part, our next highest concentration is 380. So if you're going to consider a long position on this coin, 380 seems like a very sensible place to consider taking profits. Once more, based solely on open interest, we're going to look at some other factors here too to make sure we don't just trade based on one metric, right? Again, when we look at this, we're trying to we're building a case to see if it's worth taking a trade or not. I'm really trying to convince myself not to take a trade at any given time when I look at the charts. But at this point here, there's more liquidation above the price, but liquidation delta is quite high on the downside. There's some conflicting information here, there's no doubt. So the truth is, it's not a very clean scenario or trade setup. When we zoom in a little bit smaller or closer here, we can recognize that we're barely up above the 20-day SMA. We still got the 200 and the 50-day SMA above us, so that we can see this area of confluence, right? As these moving averages are going to start to converge here, right here at about 260, 265. So if you're going to consider a long, maybe a good consideration to secure some profits in that range. But we do zoom in a bit further here. Once more, this is strictly hypothetical and not a reason to trade a coin. You don't just trade patterns alone, but we do have a nice little cup and handle pattern here with a back test of that 0.618 fib level, essentially 343, and the price continued higher from there. So the likelihood of further upside on the short term makes sense for this coin. I just think that I'm just not convinced with the macro perspective being still below this resistance. It's interesting when you see patterns form just below key level resistances. We're seeing that right here, and a lot of times they even fizzle out. So just once more, be mindful. If you do take a long, watch it close and try not to be just one of those guys that, you know, sets it and forgets about it. I get it, totally understand, but if you're using any form of leverage, make sure you adjust your stop loss higher and make sure that you are securing profits when you can. I mean, if you're not securing profits, you're not trading. That's the simple way to understand it. So let's take a look here at XRP and double check a few things. First and foremost, XRP is retesting its resistance range too. And this is one that's actually done very well if you kind of compare it and you kind of look here versus other altcoins, specifically the ones we covered here today. Outside of Ethereum, of course, we're seeing a strong retest of that local resistance at 303. So keep in mind 303 was a solid support level for a couple of days, and it's been retested here recently as a high and rejected the first time. So it's common for the second attempt to be not broken, but to get rejected, and then to retest for a third or fourth time, and that one will prevail. So if we do see a pullback here, it may be best to consider buying that dip. Let's take a look here at this area. We can see once more 293 is that point of control. Being above that, that's the new support for us here. So if we do pull back, that's a solid consideration for a long at 293. When we look here at the overall short liquidation delta, it's tapering off. It's almost at break even. This is a very good sign. This implies that a lot of shorts are getting squeezed out and that they're having, well, not just a bad day, but more importantly, there's no reason to consider a long position. Sorry, there's no reason to consider a short position just yet. It's too early to tell. In other words, I know if you saw my video from yesterday, you're probably like, wait a minute, Cash, you said 303 would be a great place to consider shorting. Of course it would, yeah, but you got to reevaluate and make sure you understand where you're at currently. Now that we look at this here, that liquidation delta has shifted, we're above another, you know, a good point of control there. There's a solid chance we're back on track here for this coin, but once more, it's hard to want to warrant a long position at 303 as well. So, you know, the truth is, liquidation above the price between 320 and 325, that should incentivize the price to go higher. And we are retesting our descending trend here. So I would say once we break free from this descending trend and or maintain above 303, that would be a better consideration. You need to recognize that it takes time to develop and to break through key levels. And at this point here, just, you know, being a breakout trader, I don't know if you've had any luck with that or not. The truth is you will have luck with it, but you're not going to have sustainability or continuation to grow your portfolio. You'll see other people posting about how awesome, how many breakout trades they took, but they're not showing you how many times they failed. And the truth is you're going to fail more than you're going to be successful when you try to break out or try to take a long into a key level resistance. Statistically, you're more favorable to find success shorting right now. That's the truth about it. But it's too tight of a margin to want to short or long right now. We want to make sure we can sustain this price action first. So we close at 303 or higher today. That, in most cases, should imply and signal further continuation higher. A lot of that depends on Bitcoin and how well XRP is performing versus Bitcoin at that time as well, right? That's why we look at these things consistently. So this time tomorrow, if we're at 303 or higher and Bitcoin's at 115K or higher, I'll probably recommend a long position. Between now and then, we just continue to go range bound here for a little bit, and Bitcoin continues to taper off and XRP performs consistent with Bitcoin, maybe a different story, right? But no trade is the best trade here, folks. I don't care if it goes to $5 tomorrow. You're better off waiting because this is just too high of a risk to consider a long. And technically a short position is a better call at this exact moment, right? So hopefully that makes sense. I described that correctly and you find benefit. Make sure you obviously check out BitUnix too, folks. I totally forgot about this. We have a new campaign running through October. Deposit bonus, also a nice reward bonus there if you're a new first-time trader. So check it out, link down below. Awesome stuff there. And I do appreciate you once more. Thanks for being an amazing part of my life. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Don't forget to like the video, comment below, and let me know what your thoughts are on these coins here we covered today. Have a good one. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.